Hi, my name is Petra. 3 weeks ago, my mother-in-law stood in her own kitchen and told me I was the reason her family was falling apart. My husband was standing right there. He didn't say a word. So I picked up my purse, walked out the front door, and drove away. This morning, I woke up to 19 missed calls. Now they say they need me back. So let me ask you something before we go any further. Have you ever done everything right, stayed quiet, kept the peace, and still ended up being the one who got blamed? Drop a comment because I want to know I'm not the only one, and if you've been erased by the people who were supposed to be your family, stay with me. Because this story doesn't end where they thought it would. It started with a house. Not our house, my father-in-law's house. The one he built himself in 1987 on a half-acre lot outside of Knoxville. The one with the wraparound porch and the kitchen window that looked out onto the backyard where he used to grow tomatoes every summer. He passed away 14 months ago, quietly, the way he did everything. A man of very few words, but always the right ones, he pulled me aside 2 months before his diagnosis got serious, while we were sitting on that porch drinking sweet tea, and he told me something I've thought about almost every day since. Petra, he said, you're the steadiest thing that's come into this family in a long time. I hope you know that. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and looked out at the yard. He passed the following spring, and what came after changed everything. His name was Holt, my father-in-law, and the will he left behind was clear, notarized, witnessed, and completely ignored by the people who thought they had the most to gain from it. My husband's name is Crispin. We'd been married 4 years when Holt died. I had spent most of those 4 years doing what wives and families like that do. I showed up. I cooked for his parents when his mother's hip was bad. I drove his father to physical therapy appointments when Crispin was traveling for work. I organized the estate paperwork when no one else wanted to deal with the filing. I was quiet about it. I didn't keep score. I wasn't doing it to earn anything. I just thought that was what family meant. Then we sat in the lawyer's office and heard the will read aloud. Holt had left the house, jointly to Crispin and to me. Not to his son alone, to both of us. The adjacent lot, a quarter-acre piece of land he'd purchased separately in the early 90s. He left to me outright, just me. His reasoning was handwritten in a personal letter attached to the will. It said roughly that he trusted me to make decisions that would not be rushed or pressured, and that he hoped the land could be used for something quiet and lasting. My mother-in-law, whose name is Vanette, sat beside me in that lawyer's office and didn't say a single word. Her face was completely still. The kind of still that isn't peace, it's calculation. My brother-in-law Rafe, who had driven down from Nashville for the reading, let out a short laugh. Just one. Then he folded his arms and looked at the ceiling. Crispin reached over and squeezed my hand. I thought that meant something. It took about 3 weeks for the calls to start. Vanette first, then Rafe, then both of them together on speakerphone like some kind of intervention. The land had to be sold. The market was good right now. The family needed liquidity. There were debts Crispin didn't know about. There were always reasons, and the reasons kept changing, but the ask stayed the same: sign the land over, or at least agree to sell it jointly and split the proceeds. I asked to see the debts they were referencing. Vonette said that wasn't my business. I said the land was my business actually. That was when things shifted. I should have seen what was coming. But I kept believing that Crispin would eventually say something, that he would step between me and his family, and remind them that I was his wife, that Holt had made a legal decision, that the land was mine and the conversation was over. I kept waiting for that moment. I kept believing it would come. It didn't. Instead, one Sunday afternoon, about 2 months after the will was read, we were all gathered at Vanette's house for what was supposed to be a regular family dinner. Pot roast, green beans, the kind of meal that makes you think nothing bad can happen at a table like this. I was helping clear the plates when Vanette came into the kitchen and closed the door behind her. She wasn't yelling. That's the part I keep coming back to. She was completely calm when she said it. You are the reason this family is not healing, she said. Holt didn't understand what he was doing when he wrote that. He wasn't thinking clearly in his last months. What you're doing, holding on to that land, refusing to do what's right for this family, It is selfish and it is cruel, and I want you to know that every person at that table agrees with me. I set down the plates I was holding, slowly, carefully, the way you do when you're trying not to break something. Does Crispin agree? I asked. She looked at me with an expression I will never forget. Not angry, just tired of me. He's trying to keep the peace, she said. He always has to clean up after you. I walked out of that kitchen, through the dining room where Rafe was still sitting with his coffee, past Crispin who was scrolling through his phone, and out the front door. I sat in my car in the driveway for about 45 seconds. Then I drove away. I didn't know where I was going at first. I just drove until the tension in my shoulders started to loosen, which took about 20 minutes, and then I pulled into the parking lot of a Cracker Barrel off the interstate and sat there watching the lights come on in the parking lot as the sky got dark. I had $318 in my personal checking account. My main savings were in a joint account with Crispin, and I had no intention of touching that. I called my college friend Ilse, who lived about 40 minutes south. She picked up on the second ring. "Are you okay?" she said, before I'd even said anything real. "I need somewhere to stay tonight," I said. "Get on 75 South," she said. "I'll leave the light on." I slept on Ilse's pull-out couch for 3 nights. She fed me scrambled eggs and didn't push me to talk more than I wanted to. On the second morning, while she was getting ready for work, I sat at her kitchen table with my laptop and started making a list, not of grievances, of facts. What I owned, what I was owed, what the law said, and what I was going to do next. Crispin texted once that first night. Just, "Where are you? Mama's upset." I read it 3 times. Then I put the phone face down on the coffee table and went to sleep. On day 2, Ilse came home and handed me a name on a piece of paper. A real estate attorney she'd used when she bought her condo. "She's good," Ilse said simply, "and she doesn't mess around." Her name was Patricia. Wait, no, I need to stay careful here because this story is already full of names. The attorney's name was Sable Hutchins. She had an office in a gray building downtown with a plant in the window that looked like it had survived multiple droughts. I liked her immediately. I laid everything out for her. The will, the personal letter, the conversations, the request to sign over the land, the Sunday dinner. Sable read through the documents I'd photographed on my phone and set them down on her desk with a very deliberate kind of calm. "This is straightforward," she said. "The land is yours. Any attempt to pressure you into transferring it without full informed consent, particularly after a death in the family while emotions are still raw, is something we take seriously. I want you to stop responding to requests about this without me present, or at minimum without notifying me first." I nodded. "And your husband?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. "He hasn't told them to stop," I finally said. She made a small note on her legal pad. "Okay," she said. "Then we plan accordingly." I drove back to Ilse's apartment and sat in the parking lot for a few minutes before going in. I kept thinking about the pot roast, about the green beans, about how I'd washed the dish towel I used to dry the plates before I left, because I always left things the way I found them. The 4th morning, I found a room to rent. A woman named Audra was subletting the spare bedroom in her townhouse at $150 a month, utilities included. She worked nights, so the apartment was quiet during the day. I met her at noon, gave her a check from my personal account, and moved in with 1 bag and my laptop. I want to be specific about the bag because it matters. A canvas weekender from a brand I can't afford to replace. A change of clothes, my charger, my toiletries, the folder where I keep paper copies of all my important documents, passport, social security card, the insurance paperwork, and at the very bottom, a card Holt had written me on our first wedding anniversary. He'd slipped it into my coat pocket at Thanksgiving dinner that year without saying a word. I only found it 3 days later. It said, "Petra, Crispin chose well. So did we. Don't ever let anyone make you feel like a guest in this family." I kept that card. I carried it out of that house in that bag on that Sunday night like it was the most valuable thing I owned, because in that moment it probably was. The first week was logistics. I called my employer. I work remotely as a UX researcher for a mid-sized software firm based in Austin, and let my manager know I'd had a family situation and would be working from a new location temporarily. No questions asked. I updated my direct deposit, separated what I could from joint accounts to a new individual checking account I'd opened at a different bank, and set up a forwarding address at a UPS store for any mail I wasn't sure about. Crispin called on day 5. I answered. "Where are you living?" he said. "Somewhere safe," I said. "This is getting out of hand." "Crispin," I said, "in that kitchen, when your mother told me I was the reason your family wasn't healing, where were you?" Silence. "I was in the other room," he said. "I didn't hear everything." "You heard enough," I said. "And you didn't come in." He started to say something about how hard things had been for his mother since Holt died, how Rafe was under a lot of financial pressure, how he was just trying to hold everyone together. I listened to all of it. I listened the way you listen when you already know the answer and you're just confirming it. "I know," I said when he finished. "I'll be in touch with you through Sable for now." I hung up and made myself a cup of tea in Audra's kitchen. She'd left a little note on the counter. "Use whatever you want. Just replace the oat milk when it runs out." I stood there reading that note for longer than made any sense, because it was such a small, ordinary kindness, and I hadn't realized how much I'd been missing. Small, ordinary kindness. That week, I also found something I wasn't expecting to find. I had been going through old emails, trying to organize the documentation Sable had asked me to gather, and I opened a folder I hadn't touched in over a year. It was labeled Holt Paperwork, a catch-all I'd made when I was helping with the estate administration. Most of it was mundane: insurance forms, utility account information. But buried near the bottom of the folder was a forwarded email I didn't remember receiving. The original was from Holt, sent to his personal account and forwarded to me 6 weeks before he passed. I don't know if he meant to send it, or if it got caught in some automated thing his phone did. But there it was. It was a message he'd drafted but never sent to Rafe. "I know you need money, son, and I wish I could fix that for you, but what I'm leaving to Petra is not a negotiating chip. She has held this family together in ways none of you have seen because she was too gracious to make you see it. The land stays with her. That's final. Don't make this ugly after I'm gone." I read it 4 times. Then I saved it to a separate folder, uploaded it to a secure cloud backup, and took a screenshot. Then I sat very still for a long time. There's a particular kind of grief that comes when someone who loved you clearly is no longer there to say it out loud. It doesn't feel like sadness exactly. It feels more like standing in a room where the lights have been turned off and knowing you remember exactly where all the furniture is. I knew what Holt had thought of me. But reading those words he never sent, words he wrote in private when there was nothing to gain from them, that was different. That was real. I printed the email at the library the next morning. I taped it on the wall beside my desk in Audra's spare bedroom. Next to it I put the anniversary card. The second week was harder. Rafe showed up at Ilse's apartment. He'd gotten her number from somewhere, probably Crispin, and she texted me to warn me before letting him in. I told her not to let him in. He stood on her porch for 10 minutes and then left. She sent me a photo of the porch after, just to confirm he was gone. I don't know what I would do without her. Then something else happened that I wasn't ready for. I got a call from a woman I barely knew, Crispin's cousin's wife, someone I'd met at maybe 3 family events. She was apologetic and awkward on the phone, like she already knew she shouldn't be calling. She said Vanette had been telling people at their church that I had manipulated Holt in his final months to change his will in my favor, that I had taken advantage of an elderly man who wasn't thinking clearly. "I didn't know if you knew," she said. "I thought you should." I thanked her. I sat down on the edge of the bed in Audra's spare room. The mattress creaked. I didn't cry. I noticed that about myself. I wasn't crying. I was making a list in my head. What could be documented? What was actionable? What was just noise? I called Sable. "Defamation is a separate conversation," she said. "But yes, document everything you hear. Names, dates, contexts. If it's coming from identifiable sources in a specific community, it matters." I started a document on my laptop that night. 3 pages by the end of the week. Then came a thing that pushed everything into a different register entirely. I was working late one evening, a research synthesis I needed to finish for a client presentation, when a notification came up on my screen. A new review had been posted on a freelance platform I'd used 2 years ago before I went full-time. A 1-star review from an anonymous account, posted that day, claiming I had stolen proprietary research frameworks from a previous client and repackaged them as my own work. It was false. Completely false. But there it was. I stared at the screen. My chest felt tight. I knew immediately it wasn't a coincidence, not after everything else that week. Someone had gone looking for ways to damage something professional. Someone had enough information about my work history to know where to look. I thought about closing the laptop. Stepping back. Letting it go. Instead, I opened a new document and started organizing my evidence. Every original research framework I developed, with timestamps from file creation and version history, client email threads confirming the originality of my deliverables, a methodology document I'd written years before that predated anything the review could be referencing. I'd kept everything. I always kept everything. I submitted a formal dispute to the platform by midnight. I attached 47 documents. By morning, they'd escalated the review to their trust and safety team. Sable called me at 8 a.m. "Your husband's family retained someone," she said without preamble. Rafe specifically. "It looks like a coordinated effort to create pressure points. We need to meet today." We met at her office at noon. She had a yellow legal pad and a cup of coffee going cold beside it. "They can't take the land from you legally," she said. "So they're trying to make you want to give it up. That's the play. Make your professional life difficult enough, make the personal fallout loud enough that you decide the fight isn't worth it." "It's worth it," I said. She looked at me over her glasses. "Good," she said. "Then here's what we do." What we did was quiet and methodical and took about 10 days. Sable filed formal notice of my ownership claim with the county, a step that had been pending but not yet completed. She sent cease and desist notices regarding the defamatory statements being made in Vanette's church community. I submitted a counter-statement to the freelance platform that the trust and safety team later used to permanently remove the fraudulent review and suspend the account that posted it. I kept going to work. I kept doing my job. I sent Audra a nice bottle of wine to say thank you for being a good housemate without making me explain myself. And then, on a Thursday evening, I was sitting on Audra's little back porch with a cup of chamomile tea and my laptop, and I saw it. Crispin had posted something on social media, a photo of himself at what looked like a family barbecue. Vanette's backyard, that porch I knew so well, the tomato plants Holt used to tend still growing wild because no one had touched them. Rafe stood next to him. Vanette was there, smiling, holding a glass of something, and they were standing in front of a new family photo mounted on the wall behind them. Big, framed, the kind you order from one of those photo printing services. I wasn't in it. I zoomed in. My face wasn't anywhere, not cropped awkwardly, not reduced to a small figure in the background, just absent. Like the 4 years I'd spent in that family were a rough draft that got thrown out. I set the phone down and looked out at the small square of Audra's backyard. A bird feeder she'd hung was empty. I made a note to pick up bird seed at the store tomorrow. That was the moment I understood that whatever I'd been grieving, the marriage, the family I thought I'd married into, the version of Crispin I'd believed in, it was already gone. I wasn't waiting for it to come back. I was just standing in the rubble and calling it a kitchen. 19 missed calls came the following Tuesday. I'd had a good day, actually. I'd finished a major project deliverable, treated myself to lunch at a Thai place near the library, and was walking back to Audra's when my phone screen lit up like a switchboard. Vanette, Crispin, Rafe. A number I didn't recognize that turned out when I called my lawyer to be connected to Rafe's retained guy. The voicemails told the story. Vanette first. "Petra, please. We are a family. I know things have gotten out of hand. We need to talk about this like adults." Crispin, "The county filing is causing problems. My mother's very upset. Can you call me?" Rafe, "Look, I know we got off on the wrong foot with this. There's an offer on the table and it's a good one. Just call me back." And then the last one, from Crispin, quieter than the others, like he'd waited until he was alone to say it. "Petra, I know I didn't handle things the way I should have. I know I didn't come into that kitchen. I keep thinking about it and I don't have a good answer for you. The family needs this resolved. I need you to help us. I listened to that one 3 times. Not because I was wavering, because I was making sure I heard it clearly. He didn't say he was wrong. He said the family needed me to help. He was still telling me the same story, just in a softer voice. I didn't call back. What I did was this. I asked Sable to set up a mediation, a formal one, with a neutral third party in her office during business hours. If they wanted to talk, we would talk. But on paper, with a record. They declined. Rafe sent a text to my cell. I don't know how he still had the number, that said, "You're really going to blow up this family over a piece of dirt?" I didn't respond. 2 days later, a settlement offer arrived through Sable's office. A number with 5 digits and a full release of claims, plus a non-disclosure agreement requiring me to never publicly discuss the contents of Holt's will, the events after his death, or any statements made by Vonette, Rafe, or Crispin. I read it twice. The number was not nothing. I won't pretend it didn't make me pause. But there was a sentence in the NDA that stopped me cold. It said I agreed that the land transfer, if completed, was voluntary and uncoerced. They wanted me to sign a document saying I had not been pressured by people who had spent 4 months pressuring me. I thought about Holt writing that email he never sent. "Don't make this ugly after I'm gone." They had made it ugly. And now they wanted me to sign a paper saying it was beautiful. I sat at Audra's kitchen table with the document in front of me and a mug of coffee going cold. I picked up a pen, and then I put it back down. I called Sable. "I'm not signing this," I said. "Okay," she said, "but I want to make a counteroffer. I didn't want the land in the way they thought I wanted it. I wasn't holding on to it to hurt them or to win something. I wanted to use it the way Holt had hoped, for something quiet and lasting. I'd been thinking about it for weeks. A small native plant nursery. Nothing commercial, nothing ambitious. Something with soil and intention. Something you could build with your hands that would still be standing in 20 years. My counter was simple. I would not sell the land. I would not transfer it. I would, however, formally disclaim any interest in the shared house, my half of the joint inheritance, in exchange for a clean legal separation, no NDAs, no release of claims and documentation, confirming the land was mine free and clear. Sable raised an eyebrow. "You're giving up a significant asset." "I know," I said. "But that house has 14 years of Vonette in it. I don't want to fight over a house I never want to go back to." She sent the counter. They went quiet for 4 days. Then they accepted. The afternoon Sable called to tell me. I was in the parking lot of a garden center in East Knoxville, having driven out there on a whim to look at native plants I couldn't yet afford. I sat in the car with the phone against my ear and watched a woman about my mother's age load a flat of lavender into the back of a Subaru. "It's done," Sable said. "The land is yours, clean title, recorded, no strings." I thanked her. I sat there another few minutes after I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't feel victorious. I felt the way the air feels after a long rain, clear, a little cold, like something has finally finished moving through. I went inside and bought 1 rosemary plant for $6.99. I carried it back to Audra's apartment and put it on the windowsill. It was the first thing I'd bought for something that was mine. I haven't spoken to Crispin since the mediation process ended. He filed the paperwork to begin divorce proceedings about 6 weeks later. I signed without drama. Our attorneys handled the rest. I haven't heard from Vonette or Rafe. I don't expect to. What I have heard from Ilse, who texts me pictures of terrible reality TV moments and makes me laugh. Audra, who told me last week she was glad she rented me the room. My manager, who offered me a promotion that came with a small raise and the word senior in front of my title. And the county extension office, which has a program for first-generation small farm operators that I applied to last month. I'm waiting to hear back. On the wall above my desk, I still have 2 pieces of paper. The anniversary card and the printed email. I've looked at them so many times the edges are starting to curl. Holt was right. I am steady. It took me a while to understand that wasn't a weakness. The people who mistook my steadiness for passivity, who thought my quietness meant they could rearrange the furniture while I wasn't looking, they were wrong about what I was doing. I was watching. I was remembering. I was building a record, not because I planned to use it, but because that's what you do when you've learned you can't rely on anyone else to tell the truth about what happened. I didn't fight them to punish them. I fought because the land meant something. Because Holt meant something. Because I am tired of being the thing people move out of the way when they need more room. Last week, I drove out to the lot for the first time since the title transferred. It's overgrown. Blackberry brambles at the edges. Some volunteer trees that have been doing their own thing for years. But the soil is good. I crouched down and took a handful of it, and it was dark and loose, and it smelled like something that has been waiting patiently. I have plans. They're small and they're mine, and I don't need anyone's approval to begin. Have you ever held on to something not because you were stubborn, but because it was the one thing someone who loved you said you deserved to keep? Have you ever let people call you difficult for refusing to disappear? Drop a comment below. I want to hear from you. I've been thinking about cause and effect a lot lately. Not in a dramatic way, just the quiet, honest kind of thinking you do when the dust finally settles and you can see the whole shape of what happened. What Vonette and Rafe did didn't come from nowhere. It came from years of a family that had learned it could apply pressure and watch people fold. It worked on Crispin. It probably worked on others I never knew about. When Holt left that land to me, they assumed it would work on me too. They assumed I was the same kind of person they were used to, someone who would weigh the cost of conflict against the cost of losing and decide losing was easier. They were wrong, and the reason they were wrong is not complicated. It's just that I had been paying attention the whole time. To Holt's words on that porch, to the anniversary card, to what it actually means to show up for people without keeping score. I had been building something in myself, quietly, without an audience, and they mistook my silence for emptiness. That's on them. There's something I've come to understand about what people call doing the right thing. It's not always clean. It doesn't always feel noble in the moment. When I was sitting at Audra's kitchen table with that settlement agreement in front of me and a number on the page that would have made my life significantly easier, the right thing felt heavy. It felt like choosing a harder road when an easier one was sitting right there. But here's what I've learned. The easier road they were offering wasn't actually easier. It had a toll at the end of it. My silence. My signature on a lie. My agreement that what happened to me was acceptable. That's not a road. That's a trap with a welcome mat. Holt understood something that his own son never quite learned, that steadiness is a form of intelligence. Knowing when not to react. Knowing what to document and what to let go. Knowing that your quiet competence is worth more than someone else's loud entitlement. He saw that in me before I fully saw it in myself, and he put it in writing while he still could. That matters. That kind of moral clarity, choosing to protect someone not because it benefits you, but because it's simply right, that's the kind of thing that echoes forward. Holt's choice to leave me that land was an act of integrity, and the people trying to undo it were, in their own way, confirming exactly why he made it. What I want to say to anyone who's been where I've been, holding on to something you know is yours while everyone around you insists you're being selfish for not handing it over, is this: your steadiness is not a weakness. Your refusal to collapse under pressure is not stubbornness. It is evidence that you know what you're worth, and the people calling you difficult for knowing that are usually the ones who benefited most from you not knowing it. I kept every email, every timestamp, every piece of paper that told the truth about what happened. Not because I planned some elaborate retaliation, because I have always believed that the truth, documented clearly and quietly, is the most durable thing a person can carry. In the end, that's what won. Not anger, not drama. Just the plain, unembellished record of what actually occurred. The rosemary plant on Audra's windowsill is doing well, by the way. It's the first thing I've grown in years. I think that means something.